The twin suns of Vex Prime beat down with merciless intensity, baking the grimy auction block where Edward Kane stood, a condemned man. His powerful physique, honed by years of brutal experience, glistened with sweat beneath the alien suns. Shackles chafed at his wrists, and the harsh, synthetic fabric of his prisoner garb felt like an insult. The air buzzed with the alien chatter of the assembled crowd, their multifaceted eyes glinting with morbid curiosity. "Presenting specimen designation, human male," boomed the auctioneer, his voice amplified by technology that grated on human ears. "Convicted of crimes against the Vexian hegemony. Subject is currently scheduled for termination. However, the hegemony recognizes the potential asset value of such specimens. Bidding begins at 10,000 credits. Edward clenched his jaw, ignoring the sensation of the metal biting into his flesh. The charges were fabricated, twisted to suit the Vexian narrative. He had defended a defenseless Krelonian merchant from a pack of hegemony thugs, demanding protection money. Justice was a luxury humans couldn't afford on Vex Prime. 10,000, a guttural voice barked from the crowd. 12,000, another chimed in. Higher pitched and reedy, the bidding war had begun. Edward focused on the task at hand, survival. He surveyed the heavily armed guards that ringed the auction block, their energy rifles trained on him. Escape seemed impossible, but he refused to surrender. He had faced worse odds. 15,000 credits. 17,000. The numbers climbed, each bid a testament to his perceived value as a disposable weapon or a test subject. He was a commodity, reduced to nothing more than a collection of muscle and potential for exploitation. The prospect sickened him. Suddenly a voice cut through the frenzy, cool and commanding. 30,000 credits. Silence fell over the courtyard. All eyes turned toward the source of the unexpected bid. 30,000 going once. The auctioneer stammered, clearly taken aback. Going twice. Sold to Commander Lexa Nix, representing the Astral Covenant. The guards descended on Edward, their grip surprisingly gentle as they guided him off the auction block. The hood was ripped from his head, and he blinked against the harsh light, his vision slowly adjusting to reveal his purchaser. She stood before him, an alien woman of striking beauty. Her skin possessed a subtle blue sheen, contrasting sharply with the severe lines of her dark uniform. Her eyes, a mesmerizing shade of violet, held an intensity that seemed to pierce through him. Her silver-streaked black hair was pulled back into a tight braid, emphasizing the sharp angles of her face. "Commander Nix," the auctioneer said, recovering his composure, "may I inquire as to your intentions for this acquisition?" "That is classified information," she replied, her voice smooth and devoid of emotion. She turned her gaze to Edward, scrutinizing him as if he were a piece of equipment. "Can you walk, human, or do I need to have you carried?" He straightened his spine, ignoring the lingering pain in his wrists. "I can walk." "Good. Take him to the transport," she instructed the guards. As they marched through the crowded marketplace, Edward tried to assess his situation. The guards flanking him were heavily armed and disciplined. Escape for now was out of the question. He needed information. "Where are you taking me?" he asked, his voice low and steady. "To my ship," she replied without breaking stride. "And then to my base of operations." "And then what?" She stopped abruptly, turning to face him, her violet eyes narrowing. "You are remarkably insolent for a condemned man." "I prefer to think of myself as a free agent," he countered, meeting her gaze. Unflinchingly. "What makes you think I'll work for you?" A flicker of amusement crossed her face. "You won't have a choice." "Everyone has a choice," he said, his voice hardening. "What makes you so sure?" She stepped closer, her voice dropping to a whisper that only he could hear. "A young Krelonian female, name of Inara. Does that name mean anything to you?" Edward froze, his heart hammered against his ribs. How do you know about her? The Astral Covenant has resources, she said, her eyes never leaving his. She is currently under our protection. Her continued safety depends entirely on your cooperation. He clenched his fists, the shackles digging into his skin. Prove she's alive. With a flick of her wrist, Commander Nix activated a small holographic projector. An image shimmered into existence, showing Inara in a well-appointed room reading a datapad. She looked healthy and unharmed. This is a live feed, the commander explained. She is being treated well. That will remain the case as long as you fulfill your obligations to the Astral Covenant. Relief washed over him, so potent it almost brought him to his knees. Inara was alive, safe. He would do whatever it took to keep her that way. He gave a curt nod. What do you want from me? Your skills, she replied, deactivating the projector. Your unique perspective. Your human ruthlessness. For what purpose? That is not your concern, not yet. For now, focus on acclimating to your new surroundings. We have much to discuss. As they approached a sleek black spacecraft at the edge of the spaceport, Edward knew he had no choice. He would play along, gather information, and wait for an opportunity to turn the tables. But he was under no illusions. Commander Nix was a dangerous woman, and he was walking into a web of intrigue that could cost him everything. The commander paused at the ship's entrance ramp, turning to face him once more. One more thing, Mr. Kane. Any attempts to escape or resist will be unpleasant. We have already taken precautions. Edward felt a faint throbbing at the base of his skull, a dull ache he hadn't noticed before. What do you mean? A tracking implant, she said, her voice devoid of sympathy. It was installed while you were awaiting auction. Consider it collateral. Her smile didn't reach her eyes. Welcome to the Astral Covenant, Mr. Kane. I have a feeling this is the beginning of a very productive partnership. As the ship's doors closed behind them, Edward couldn't shake the feeling that he had just made a deal with the devil, and he had a sinking suspicion that the price of that deal would be far higher than he could ever imagine. The sleek Covenant ship pierced through the inky blackness of space, heading toward an unknown destination. Inside, the tension was thick enough to cut with a vibro blade. Edward Kane, the human predator, stood rigidly as Commander Lexa Nix observed him with an intensity that mirrored his own. The violet of her eyes seemed to deepen in the artificial light of the ship's corridor. So, Edward began, breaking the silence, you saved me from certain death. I'm grateful, I guess. Lexa tilted her head, a small, almost imperceptible smile playing on her lips. Grateful? I wouldn't expect gratitude, Mr. Kane. I expect results. He chuckled humorlessly. Results, right. What kind of results are we talking about? I'm not exactly equipped for intergalactic diplomacy. Diplomacy is rarely effective with the hegemony, she stated matter-of-factly. Your particular skill set is far more persuasive. Edward's eyes narrowed. You're talking about killing. I thought the Astral Covenant was some kind of peacekeeping force. We are, Lexa replied, her voice hardening, but sometimes peace requires a forceful intervention. The hegemony doesn't negotiate, they conquer, and they're very good at it. And you think I can stop them? I think you can help, she corrected. You possess a ruthlessness, a survival instinct, honed by years of fighting against impossible odds, qualities that are rare in this quadrant of the galaxy. So I'm a blunt instrument, he said, crossing his arms. That's flattering. Lexa stopped walking, turning to face him directly. Her gaze was unwavering. You're a tool, Mr. Kane. A very sharp, very dangerous tool, but a tool nonetheless. Your value depends on your willingness to be used effectively. And what if I refuse? Her smile returned, this time with a hint of menace. Refusal is not an option. Remember Inara? Edward's breath hitched. Don't you dare threaten her. I'm not threatening, Lexa said calmly. I'm stating a fact. Inara's safety is contingent upon your cooperation. She's currently under our protection, receiving the best care we can provide. But that protection is not absolute. The hegemony has long arms. You manipulated me, Edward accused, his fists clenching. You used her to blackmail me. I secured your cooperation, Lexa countered. Call it what you will. The fact remains, Inara's life is now inextricably linked to your actions. If you try to escape, if you betray us, if you fail to complete your missions, her safety is jeopardized. What? Missions? He demanded, his voice tight with suppressed rage. What exactly am I signing up for? You're joining the Astral Covenant, she announced, her voice resonating with authority. You will receive training, equipment, and support. You will follow my orders, and you will use your skills to strike a blow against the hegemony. And if I do all that, Edward pressed, if I become your perfect little assassin, then what happens to Inara? Does she get to go free? Does she get a life? If you succeed, Lexa replied, her gaze softening slightly, I will personally ensure her safety and well-being. I will provide her with the resources she needs to build a new life, far away from the reach of the hegemony. Edward studied her face, searching for any sign of deception. He saw only determination, resolve, and a hint of something else, something almost sadness. I want it in writing, he said finally, his voice regaining its steely edge. A guarantee, signed and sealed. Lexa nodded. Agreed, we will formalize the agreement, but understand this, Mr. Kane, trust is a two-way street. I expect your loyalty, and I expect your obedience. Loyalty is earned, Edward retorted. Obedience, that remains to be seen. Lexa stepped closer, her violet eyes boring into his. You are a valuable asset, Mr. Kane, but you are also a risk. I will be watching you closely. Any hint of betrayal, any sign of dissent, and the consequences will be severe. Understood, Edward replied, meeting her gaze without flinching. But understand this, Commander Nix. I may be playing along for now, but I don't take kindly to being controlled. I'll do what I have to do to protect Inara, but the moment she's safe, all bets are off. We understand each other then, she said, a hint of a smile playing at the corner of her lips. Now, come. We have much to discuss. Your training begins immediately. As they turned to leave, Edward felt a sharp, throbbing pain at the base of his skull. He instinctively reached up, his fingers probing the sensitive area. What's wrong? Lexa asked, noticing his discomfort. Nothing, he lied, trying to ignore the dull ache. Just a headache. I suggest you get used to it, Lexa said, her voice devoid of sympathy. It's a necessary precaution. What precaution? Edward demanded, stopping in his tracks. What are you talking about? Lexa sighed. During your processing before the auction, a tracking chip was implanted at the base of your skull. It allows us to monitor your location, your vitals, everything. Edward felt a surge of anger, a violation. So profound it took his breath away. You chipped me without my consent? Your consent was irrelevant, Lexa stated coldly. You were a condemned prisoner. Now you are an asset of the Astral Covenant. The chip ensures your compliance. So I'm a dog on a leash, he said, his voice laced with venom. Think of it as a safeguard, she replied, a way to ensure that you don't stray from the path. It also provides us with valuable information about your physical condition. If you're injured, we'll know. If you're in danger, we can react. And if I try to remove it, the chip is designed to be tamper-proof, Lexa explained. Any attempt to remove it will trigger a fail-safe mechanism. It will disable your nervous system. Edward clenched his fists, his body trembling with barely controlled rage. You're telling me I'm a prisoner in my own body. You're telling me a necessary evil, she corrected. The hegemony would not hesitate to use similar measures against you, and far worse. If you want to protect the people you care about, you must be willing to do whatever it takes, even if it means sacrificing your own freedom. Edward knew she was right, but that didn't make it any easier to swallow. He had spent his entire life fighting for freedom, and now he was being forced to surrender it for the sake of someone else. Consider this a baptism, Lexa said, her voice softening slightly. A trial by fire. If you can endure this, if you can overcome the challenges that lie ahead, you will become something more than just a weapon. You will become a force for change, a symbol of hope. Edward looked at her, his eyes filled with doubt and suspicion. Hope? Is that what you really believe, Commander Nix, or is that just another lie to manipulate me? It's what I choose to believe, she said, her voice firm. And it's what I need you to believe as well. The fate of countless worlds may depend on it. The fate of countless worlds, Edward echoed, the weight of her words pressing down on him, and all of it rests on my shoulders. Not just yours, Lexa replied. We are in this together, you and I, the Astral Covenant. We will face the hegemony together, and we will win. Edward took a deep breath, trying to quell the turmoil raging inside him. He had no choice. He had to play along for Inara's sake. He had to trust Lexa Nix, even though every instinct told him not to. All right, he said finally, his voice resigned. Let's get this over with. Show me what you want me to do. Lexa nodded, her expression unreadable. Follow me. There's a lot for you to learn. As they continued down the corridor, Edward couldn't shake the feeling that he had just made a deal with the devil. He had traded his freedom for a promise that might be broken as easily as it was made. He had entered a game he didn't understand, with stakes he couldn't afford to lose, and all he could do was hope that he would live long enough to see it through. He reached up again, touching the spot at the base of his skull where the tracking chip was implanted. He could feel its cold metallic presence, a constant reminder of his captivity. He knew that Lexa Nix was watching him, monitoring his every move. He had to be careful. He had to play her game, at least for now, but he also knew that he wouldn't stay a prisoner forever. The dangerous predator would eventually find a way to break free. And when he did, he would make sure that Lexa Nix and the entire Astral Covenant understood the true meaning of the word dangerous. His freedom was everything. The training facility aboard the Astral Covenant's flagship was unlike anything Edward had seen before. The simulation room could recreate any environment with perfect accuracy, down to the smell and atmospheric pressure. For the past 18 hours, he and Commander Nix had been running through infiltration scenarios of the Vexian facility. Again, Nix commanded after their fifth failed attempt. Sweat beaded on her blue skin, her breathing slightly labored. Edward wiped his brow. We've been at this for hours. Maybe we should break. Again, she repeated, her violet eyes flashing. With determination, as the simulation reset, Edward noticed something strange. The commander's skin seemed to pulse with a faint luminescence, particularly along her forearms and neck. When she caught him staring, the glow immediately subsided. Something you want to ask, human? Her tone was defensive. Just wondering why. You're pushing so hard, he replied carefully, and maybe what other secrets you're keeping. Before she could respond, the door to the simulation room slid open. A tall reptilian alien with copper scales entered, his expression grave. Commander, he said, bowing slightly, we have a situation. Nix's posture stiffened. Report, Lieutenant Krell. Our intelligence network has detected unusual activity. Someone accessed our mission files 3 hours ago. The Vexian facility has doubled its security protocols. We've been compromised, she said flatly. Krell nodded. It appears so, Commander. Edward watched the exchange with growing concern. "How bad is it?" "Bad enough," Nix replied. "If we stick to our original timeline, we'll be walking into a trap." "Then we accelerate," Edward suggested. "Hit them before—" "They're fully prepared." Nix and Krell exchanged looks. "That's extremely risky," the lieutenant cautioned. "So is waiting until they've had time to set up a proper welcome party," Edward countered. He turned to Nix. "You brought me on for my skills. This is what humans do best, adapt and overcome." A small smile played at the corner of her lips. "Indeed." She turned to Krell. "Prepare the stealth shuttle. We leave in 2 hours." After Krell departed, Nix deactivated the simulation. The realistic Vexian compound dissolved around them, revealing the plain metal walls of the training room. "There's something you should know before we go," she said, her voice lower. "Something I've been reluctant to share." Edward crossed his arms. "I'm listening." She hesitated, then rolled up her sleeve. The blue skin of her forearm began to glow, with an intricate pattern of light that pulsed in rhythm with her heartbeat. "My people, the Lumidari, were nearly wiped out by the Vexians generations ago. Those of us who survived developed adaptations." She placed her glowing hand on a nearby metal panel, and it instantly melted beneath her touch. Enhanced strength, accelerated healing, and this impressive, Edward said, genuinely amazed. "Why hide it?" "Because beings with abilities like mine are hunted throughout the galaxy. The hegemony considers us too dangerous to live." Her eyes met his. "Much like they view humans." Understanding dawned on him. "That's why you're so high-ranking. Despite the prejudice against your kind, you've been hiding in plain sight." She nodded. "Few know my true nature. I'm trusting you with this information because where we're going, I may need to use these abilities openly." The vulnerability in her admission stirred something in Edward. He stepped closer, close enough to feel the warmth radiating from her luminescent skin. "Thank you for trusting me," he said softly. Their eyes locked, and the tension that had been building between them since their first meeting suddenly crystallized into something undeniable. Without thinking, Edward reached out, his fingers brushing against her glowing forearm. The sensation was electric, literally. A pleasant current passed between them, making his skin tingle. Nix inhaled sharply at his touch, but didn't pull away. "That's unusual," she whispered. "My energy doesn't typically respond to others this way." "Maybe I'm not typical," he replied, his voice husky. Her violet eyes darkened as she leaned closer. "No, you certainly are not." The moment hung between them, charged with possibility. Then, with a boldness that surprised even himself, Edward closed the distance and pressed his lips to hers. The kiss was tentative at first, then deepened as Nix responded with unexpected passion. The luminescence spread across her skin, bathing them both in a soft blue glow. When they finally broke apart, both were breathing heavily. "That was—" she began. "A mistake," he offered, suddenly uncertain. "Unexpected," she corrected, a smile playing at her lips, "but not unwelcome. Unwelcome." Before they could say more, an alarm blared throughout the ship. Nix immediately stepped back, her commander's demeanor returning. "That's the proximity alert," she said, already moving toward the door. "We may have less time than we thought." As they hurried through the corridors toward the command center, Edward felt the weight of what had just transpired between them. Whatever was developing between him and Nix would have to wait. Right now, they had a mission to complete, one that had just become significantly more dangerous. In the command center, screens displayed a Vexian patrol vessel approaching their position. Krell was already coordinating evasive maneuvers. "They haven't detected us yet," he reported, "but they're sweeping the sector systematically." "We need to move now," Nix decided. "Prepare the stealth shuttle immediately." As the crew scrambled to obey, she turned to Edward. I hope you're ready for this, human. We're about to put those predatory skills of yours to the ultimate test. Despite the danger ahead, Edward couldn't help but grin. Born ready, Commander. The look she gave him in return, equal parts professional respect and personal desire, made his heart race faster than any combat situation ever had. The stealth shuttle sliced through space, its advanced cloaking technology rendering it invisible to Vexian sensors. Inside the cramped cockpit, Edward and Nix sat side by side, the air between them charged with unspoken tension after their kiss. ETA to the Vexian facility is 17 minutes, Nix announced, her fingers dancing across the control panel. The blue luminescence beneath her skin had faded to a subtle glow, visible only when she moved in certain ways. Edward checked his weapons, a Terran pulse rifle modified with Covenant technology and a viro blade strapped to his thigh. So, what's the plan? Still going with the maintenance shaft entry? Yes, the security upgrades won't have reached the environmental systems yet. She glanced at him. Once inside, we split up. I'll head to the central server to download their research data before destroying it. You'll plant explosive charges at these 3 junction points. She highlighted locations on the holographic display. Divide and conquer. Risky. Time is our enemy now. We need to be efficient. As they approached the Vexian moon where the facility was located, Nix engaged the landing protocols. The shuttle descended silently through the thin atmosphere, touching down in a ravine 2 kilometers from their target. Atmospheric conditions are within human tolerance, she noted, checking the readouts. Gravity is slightly lower than you're used to, about 80% of Earth standard. So I'll be able to jump higher and run faster, Edward grinned. Advantage, human. Nix rolled her eyes, but a smile tugged at her lips. Just don't get cocky. As they prepared to disembark, Nix's communicator beeped. She frowned, checking the encrypted message. It's from Lieutenant Krell. He's identified the spy. Her expression darkened. It's Admiral Thorn. Edward recognized the name. The highest-ranking human in the Astral Covenant. Why would he betray the mission? According to Krell, Thorn believes humans are too dangerous to be trusted as allies. He thinks I've been compromised by, she hesitated, my association with you. Sounds like he has issues with humans in general. It's more complicated than that. Thorn lost his family during the Terran-Vexian border conflict. He joined goes to fight the hegemony, but he's always been wary of bringing more humans into the fold. She looked at him intently. He thinks I'm making a mistake trusting you with such a critical mission. Edward felt a flare of anger. So he'd rather see the mission fail than have a human succeed. His message to the Vexians was carefully crafted. It warned them of an infiltration, but didn't specify who or exactly when. He's playing both sides. She holstered her weapon. We proceed as planned, but with extreme caution. They exited the shuttle, the alien landscape stretching before them, jagged rock formations under a greenish sky, with a massive gas giant looming on the horizon. They moved swiftly across the terrain, Edward finding that his enhanced agility in the lower gravity gave him a natural advantage. You move well for a human, Nix observed, as he easily cleared a wide crevasse. You should see what else I can do, he replied, with a suggestive smirk. The faint blue glow beneath her skin intensified momentarily, perhaps after the mission. They reached the facility perimeter without incident, a sprawling complex of interconnected domes and towers surrounded by a shimmering energy barrier. Using Nix's access codes, still valid despite the security upgrade, they slipped through a maintenance portal and into a narrow utility tunnel. This is where we separate, Nix said as they reached a junction. The server room is 3 levels. Up. Your targets are on this level and the one below. Edward caught her arm before she could leave. Be careful. If Thorn sent a more specific message, you could be walking into a trap. I can handle myself, her voice softened. But thank you for your concern. Acting on impulse, Edward pulled her close and kissed her again. This time, there was nothing tentative about it. Her body pressed against his, the energy beneath her skin creating a pleasant, tingling sensation wherever they touched. When they broke apart, both were breathing heavily. "For luck," he explained with a grin. "Humans and their superstitions," she murmured, but her eyes had darkened to a deep indigo. Sign of arousal in her species, he realized. "See you at the rendezvous point," he said, reluctantly releasing her. As Edward made his way through the facility's lower levels, planting explosive charges at key structural points, he couldn't help but think about Nyx. Their connection had grown from reluctant cooperation to something far more intense in a remarkably short time. Was it just the danger, the adrenaline of their situation, or something deeper? He was placing the final charge when his communicator crackled. "Edward," Nyx's voice was tense, barely above a whisper. "I've got the data, but we have a problem. Thorn is here." "What? How?" "He must have used a faster ship. He's in the server room with Vexian guards." A pause. "They're looking for me, but I'm hidden for now." Edward's mind raced. "Can you get out?" "Not without being seen. And if they capture me, they'll learn everything about the Covenant. Hold tight. I'm coming to you." "No!" "Complete your mission. That's an order." Edward smiled grimly as he set the timer on the final charge. "Sorry, Commander. I don't take orders from people who buy me at auction." He heard her soft laugh despite the tension. "Stubborn human. You have no idea," he replied, already moving toward the upper levels. "And when this is over, you're going to find out just how stubborn I can be." The implied promise hung between them as Edward began his ascent, weapon ready, his predatory instincts fully engaged. Admiral Thorn had made a critical mistake in underestimating what a human would do to protect someone they cared about. And Edward Kane was about to show him exactly why humans had such a fearsome reputation in this part of the galaxy. The stealth shuttle, now a distant memory, had delivered them to a world simmering with secrets and imminent destruction. Lexa, ever vigilant, had identified a route through the bowels of the facility, a service tunnel untouched by the recent security upgrades. "This is where we separate," she'd stated, her voice barely a whisper above the hum of the facility's machinery. "I'll head to the central server to download their research data. You'll plant explosive charges at these 3 junction points. They're structurally critical." Edward, ever the pragmatist, had countered with a raised eyebrow. "Divide and conquer, risky, isn't it?" Lexa's response had been immediate, her violet eyes locking onto his. "Time is our enemy now. We need to be efficient. Besides," a hint of a smile played on her lips, "I trust your talents." The memory of that implicit trust and the burgeoning connection that lay beneath it spurred Edward onward as he navigated the labyrinthine corridors. His human senses, honed by years of hard-won survival, scanned for any sign of immediate threat. He carried a compact pulse rifle, a Terran design modified with Astral Covenant technology, and a vibro blade strapped securely to his thigh, a brutal reminder of the intimate nature of combat. His mission was straightforward, yet fraught with peril. Each junction point was a critical support structure, a choke point in the facility's infrastructure. The explosive charges, once detonated, would cripple the entire complex, ensuring that the hegemony's twisted research remained buried forever. But the facility was a living organism, bristling with sensors and patrolled by heavily armed Vexian guards. Success demanded stealth, precision, and a healthy dose of calculated risk. Meanwhile, Lexa moved with a silent grace, her Lumidari abilities allowing her to bend light and shadow to her will. She skirted sensor grids, bypassed security checkpoints, and navigated the corridors with an almost supernatural awareness. The central server, the repository of the hegemony's dark secrets, was her objective. Its data, once exposed, would cripple the hegemony's propaganda machine and spark rebellions across the galaxy. But the path to the server was heavily guarded, and Admiral Thorne, the traitor within the Covenant, was undoubtedly waiting for her. Edward reached the first junction point, a vast chamber where massive conduits converged. His internal chronometer ticked down the seconds. Time was of the essence. He quickly located the optimal placement point for the explosive charge, a nexus, where multiple conduits met. With deft hands, he secured the charge, set the timer, and moved on to the next location. As he navigated the corridors, his comm unit crackled to life. It was Lexa, her voice tight with urgency. "Edward, I've got the data, but we have a problem. Thorne is here." Edward felt a jolt of adrenaline, his senses sharpening instantly. What? How? He shouldn't have been able to get here so quickly. He must have used a faster ship. He's in the server room with Vexian guards. He's clearly been feeding them intel for some time now. It's a trap. A pause, then, "They're looking for me, but I'm hidden for now." Edward's mind raced. Thorne's betrayal had thrown a wrench into their carefully laid plans. "Can you get out?" "Not without being seen. And if they capture me, they'll learn everything about the Covenant, all of the people, the bases, the allies, everything," he finished. Edward's decision was immediate. "Hold tight. I'm coming to you." "No." Lexa's voice was sharp, her command instinct overriding their personal connection. "Complete your part of the mission. The charges need to be detonated. That's an order." Edward paused, his jaw clenching. Lexa was right, logically. The mission came first. The data, the destruction of the hegemony's research, it was all paramount. But the thought of Lexa facing Thorne alone, outnumbered and outgunned, it was unbearable. A grim smile twisted his lips as he completed the placement of his second charge. "Sorry, Commander. I don't take orders from people who buy me at auction." He could hear her soft laugh, a brief spark of amusement in the face of overwhelming danger. "Stubborn human." "You have no idea," he replied, already moving toward the upper levels, toward the central server room. "And when this is over, you're going to find out just how stubborn I can be." The unspoken promise hung between them as Edward severed the connection, his pulse quickening with determination. Admiral Thorne had made a critical mistake in underestimating the lengths to which a human would go to protect someone they cared about. And Edward Kane was about to show him exactly why humans had such a fearsome reputation in this part of the galaxy. The corridors were now teeming with Vexian guards, their weapons trained and ready. The facility was on full alert, the air thick with tension, but Edward moved with a newfound purpose, his instincts honed to a razor's edge. He was no longer simply an assassin, a mercenary, or a pawn in Lexa's game. He was something more. He was a protector, he was a partner, and he was coming for Thorne. He encountered a patrol of Vexian guards, their visors gleaming in the red. Emergency lighting. Without hesitation, he unleashed a barrage of pulse fire, taking them down with ruthless efficiency. He was a whirlwind of motion, a blur of deadly intent. The Vexian guards fell before him, their bodies collapsing in lifeless heaps. As he ascended the levels, the resistance intensified. The corridors became narrower, the security checkpoints more frequent, the guards more heavily armed. But Edward pressed onward, fueled by adrenaline and a growing sense of righteous fury. He was a force of nature, an unstoppable tide. He reached the final level, the one housing the central server. The entrance was guarded by a squad of elite Vexian warriors, their armor gleaming, their weapons charged. But Edward was undeterred. He knew that Lexa was on the other side of that door, fighting for her life, fighting for the future of the galaxy. With a roar of defiance, he charged into the fray. Pulsefire erupted from his rifle, tearing through the ranks of the Vexian warriors. He moved with a speed and agility that defied their expectations, dodging their attacks and delivering lethal blows. He was a dancer in the chaos, a master of death. The Vexian warriors fell one by one, their bodies riddled with pulsefire. Finally, only one remained, a hulking brute wielding a massive energy cannon. The brute leveled the cannon at Edward, its barrel glowing with deadly energy. But Edward was too quick. He dove to the side, narrowly avoiding the blast, and unleashed a burst of fire, disabling the cannon. Then, with a leap that defied gravity, he closed the distance and plunged his vibroblade into the brute's heart. The Vexian warrior staggered, his eyes widening in disbelief before collapsing to the ground. Edward stood over the fallen foe, breathing heavily, his body aching, his mind racing. He had cleared the path to the server room. Now it was time to face Thorn. He kicked open the door to the server room, his pulse rifle raised and ready. The scene that greeted him was one of chaos and carnage. Vexian guards lay scattered across the floor, their bodies riddled with pulse fire. Lexa stood in the center of the room, her face bruised, her cloak torn, but her spirit unbroken. She was engaged in a fierce hand-to-hand combat with Admiral Thorn, their bodies a blur of motion. Thorn was a formidable opponent, his human strength, augmented by years of combat training and a burning hatred for all things alien. But Lexa was a match for him, her Lumidari abilities giving her an edge. Her skin glowed with a faint blue light, her movements fluid and graceful. As Edward watched, Thorn landed a blow that sent Lexa staggering. She fell to her knees, her breath coming in ragged gasps. Thorn stood over her, a triumphant gleam in his eyes. "It's over, Lexa," he sneered. "You've lost. The hegemony will prevail, and humanity will be purged from the galaxy." Edward could remain silent no longer. With a roar of fury, he charged into the room, his pulse rifle blazing. Thorn whirled around, his eyes widening in surprise. Edward unleashed a sustained burst of fire, forcing Thorn to dive for cover. Lexa used the opportunity to regain her footing. She rose to her feet, her luminescence intensifying, her eyes burning with determination. Together, they faced Thorn, their backs to each other, a united front against the traitor within their ranks. "It's over, Thorn," Edward said, his voice low and menacing. "Your betrayal ends here." Thorn laughed, a hollow, desperate sound. "You're fools. You can't stop the hegemony. They're too powerful, too vast. You're just delaying the inevitable." Lexa stepped forward, her voice resonating with Lumidari energy. "The hegemony thrives on fear and oppression, but the galaxy is rising up against them. We will not be silenced. We will not be enslaved. We will fight for freedom until our last breath." With a final cry of defiance, they charged. Edward unleashed a torrent of pulsefire, forcing Thorn to retreat. Lexa moved with lightning speed, her Lumidari energy lashing out, striking Thorn with blinding force. Thorn fought back with all his might, his blows landing with bone-crushing force. But Edward and Lexa were too strong, too determined. They fought as one, their skills and abilities complementing each other perfectly. Finally, with a combined effort, they disarmed Thorn and brought him to his knees. He was defeated, broken, his eyes filled with despair. "It's over, Thorn," Edward said, his voice filled with a mixture of triumph and pity. "Your reign of terror is over." As the firefight ended, a cold, artificial voice echoed through the facility. The words sent chills down Edward's spine. "Warning! Self-destruct sequence initiated. T-5 minutes. The hegemony's days of dominance were numbered." Exposure of their insidious neural weapon sent shockwaves across countless worlds, igniting sparks of rebellion that quickly coalesced into raging infernos. Planets long oppressed threw off their shackles, their citizens rising up in defiance against their Vexian overlords. And at the forefront of this galactic uprising stood Edward Kane and Commander Lexa Nix, an unlikely pair forged in the fires of adversity. Their partnership, born from a condemned cell and a desperate gamble, had blossomed into something far greater. The revelation of Lexa's lumidary powers, coupled with Edward's unwavering human resilience, proved to be the catalyst that unified disparate species under a single banner of hope. The oppressed saw in them a beacon of defiance, a testament to the power of collaboration against tyranny. The Astral Covenant, once a clandestine organization operating in the shadows, now became the de facto military arm of the burgeoning rebellion. Lexa, with her strategic acumen and unwavering resolve, orchestrated a series of daring raids and strategic strikes against hegemony infrastructure. Edward, leveraging his unique human perspective and lethal combat skills, led countless ground operations, liberating enslaved populations and crippling enemy forces. Together, they were an unstoppable force, their leadership inspiring legions of freedom fighters to join their cause. Edward, no longer a mere pawn in Lexa's game, had embraced his role as a champion of the oppressed, his human rage channeled into a righteous crusade against injustice. And Lexa, freed from the constraints of her hidden lumidary identity, found in Edward a partner who not only accepted her true self, but celebrated it. The final confrontation with the hegemony was a spectacle of galactic proportions. A massive armada composed of ships from dozens of liberated worlds converged on Vex Prime, the heart of the hegemony's power. The ensuing battle raged across the skies, a swirling vortex of laser fire and explosive energy. Lexa, at the helm of the Astral Covenant flagship, coordinated the assault with masterful precision, her lumidary powers enhancing her tactical awareness to an almost precognitive level. Edward, leading a squadron of elite human and lumidary fighters, spearheaded the ground invasion, breaching the hegemony's planetary defenses and striking at their command centers. The Vexians, caught off guard by the ferocity of the rebellion and the unexpected alliance between humans and lumidari, fought with desperate tenacity, but their efforts were ultimately futile. The tide had turned. The oppressed had become the aggressors, driven by a burning desire for freedom and fueled by the unwavering leadership of Edward and Lexa. After days of intense fighting, the hegemony's leadership finally surrendered, their once impregnable fortress, crumbling under the weight of the rebellion's assault. The galaxy erupted in celebration as news of the hegemony's defeat spread like wildfire, sparking joyous uprisings on planets still under their control. In the aftermath of the war, a new era dawned for the galaxy. The oppressive reign of the hegemony was replaced by a galactic alliance, a coalition of free worlds committed to mutual protection and cooperation. Lexa and Edward, hailed as heroes and liberators, played a pivotal role in shaping the alliance's foundations, ensuring that the mistakes of the past would never be repeated. With the war finally over, Edward and Lexa found themselves at a crossroads. Their bond, forged in the crucible of conflict, had deepened into something profound, a connection that transcended species and defied all expectations. They stood on the precipice of a new chapter, ready to explore the possibilities that lay before them. The first order of business was solidifying the Galactic Alliance. With the hegemony shattered, a power vacuum threatened to engulf the galaxy in chaos. Lexa, with her diplomatic skills and unwavering commitment to justice, worked tirelessly to unite the disparate worlds under a common banner, forging alliances and mediating disputes. Edward, leveraging his human empathy and his understanding of the oppressed, became a powerful voice for equality and social justice, ensuring that the needs of all species were taken into account. Together, they steered the Galactic Alliance towards a future of peace and prosperity, establishing a system of checks and balances to prevent any single power from dominating the galaxy. They created a Galactic Council composed of representatives from all member worlds, to ensure that all voices were heard and all decisions were made collectively. They established a galactic defense force, a unified military force composed of soldiers from all species to protect the Alliance from external threats and to maintain peace within its borders. But beyond the grand stage of galactic politics, Edward and Lexa also focused on building a life together, a sanctuary where they could escape the pressures of leadership and nurture their growing love. They established a home on a newly terraformed planet, a verdant paradise where humans and Lumidari could coexist in harmony. They built a sprawling estate, a testament to their shared values of sustainability and environmental stewardship. They planted gardens filled with flowers from across the galaxy, creating a vibrant tapestry of colors and scents. They built a library filled with books from every culture, a repository of knowledge and wisdom from across the cosmos. And in the evenings, as the sun dipped below the horizon, casting long shadows across the landscape, they would sit together on their veranda, sipping Lumidari tea and gazing at the stars, dreaming of the future they were building together. "What do you see?" Edward would ask, his voice filled with tenderness. "I see hope," Lexa would reply, her luminescence glowing softly in the twilight. "I see a galaxy where all species can live in peace and harmony. A galaxy where the mistakes of the past are never repeated." "And I see you," Edward would say, pulling her close. "My partner, my love, my guiding star. I see a future filled with endless possibilities as long as we're together." And as they embraced, their love a beacon in the darkness, they knew that they were ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead, together. Their partnership, born from the ashes of destruction, had blossomed into a symbol of hope for the entire galaxy, a testament to the power of love and unity in the face of adversity.